Does it work? Phenibut for anxiety and productivity. Does it work? Very excited to talk about this one. I did include Phenibut in my list of potential nootropics and supplements for entrepreneurs dealing with anxiety and looking to up their game in terms of productivity. And how about it? Does it boost your mood? Does it increase productivity? Does it have a pro-social effect? And what are the different uses for Phenibut? So we're going to be talking about that this evening. And yeah, it's going to be a great video for both entrepreneurs and general health invested crowds. But I think everyone is interested in this particular nootropic. So let's get into it. You guys might notice I'm using a little different introduction music this time. So Phenibut, what is it and how does it work? I used Phenibut in 2017 and 2018 for its anxiety-reducing effects. I was working a job I wasn't a huge fan of at the time, but I was able to plow through it with the use of this supplement or dietary supplement, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to pull up not only the structure of Phenibut, the pharmacodynamic effects of Phenibut, excuse me, but also what the literature has to say about it. Also, my personal experience, dosing guidelines, and who should and shouldn't take Phenibut. So that's a very important part of it as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. So what is Phenibut and how does it work? So Phenibut is an analog or structurally similar to something called GABA. Now, GABA is a neurotransmitter nervous system, and it's responsible for modulating and inhibiting electrical activity and signaling within the brain. So it's inhibitory and therefore counterbalances excitatory activity created by something called glutamate, which is its opposite. So there's GABA on the one hand over here, and there's glutamate on the other hand over here, and they sort of work in a push-pull fashion to modulate excitatory and inhibitory activity in the brain. So excitatory includes signaling and communication between neurons for activity, and inhibitory being sort of a more parasympathetic response, calming down the nervous system, reducing the activity, and creating a rest state, let's say, between those neural networks. So anyway, Phenibut is actually very similar to this GABA molecule, this neurotransmitter, both in terms of structure and effect. However, with GABA, which you can take as a supplement, it binds to a class of receptors known as GABA A receptors and GABA B receptors. So with GABA receptors, there's an A and a B class, whereas Phenibut binds specifically and much more strongly to the GABA B receptor with a very weak action at the GABA A receptor. GABA, if you take that as a supplement, is going to have activity at both receptors, etc. So if you look here at the images here, you can see, oh, and by the way, another drug that binds to GABA B as an agonist, much like Phenibut, is a drug called baclofen. It's used as a muscle relaxant and has some other relaxing properties as well. So, and in terms of the similar structure between these drugs, you can actually see the chemical structure of the bonds here. You've got baclofen over here on the right, gabapentin, which is a very similar drug, acts at those same receptors. And here we have the R and the S entameters of Phenibut. You can see they all share a very similar chemical structure. So they have similar chemical activity in the body, and they work at these different receptors as well. So the Phenibut molecule, like I said, binds to GABA B, share similar mechanisms with pregabalin and gabalin, and is also considered a gabapentinoid. Now, pregabalin and gabalin are typically prescribed for seizure prevention or control and neuralgia, pain relief and things like that. But it can also be used off-label to treat insomnia. So off-label means that it's not FDA approved for that use, but can be used and is frequently prescribed by doctors for that reason. So a little bit of the background in terms of the drug classes there and where Phenibut as a compound fits into the overall pharmacopoeia, if you will. So, what does the literature say about Phenibut? Now, I know a lot of people that put up YouTube videos on the subject, they tend to talk about anecdotal experiences, their experiences they've heard from other people. But what does the medical literature actually have to say about it? So I thought you guys might find this interesting. So I did a little look at the research, looked at the papers, and there's actually not a lot of, there's virtually no human studies that have been done. The limited studies that are available typically have been done in rats. And there's also a few review papers, but typically about case reports on, let's say, withdrawals that people have had. Now, just briefly, a case report is an investigation into a single occurrence of something. So as far as what's available in terms of literature, there's a couple of papers here I just wanted to briefly go over, might fill in a little bit more background for you guys. You know, this is a science-based, evidence-based channel, so I want to bring the science and whatever evidence I can. So we had the first paper called GABA, a tranquilizer and nootropic drug. So was invented and introduced into clinical practice in Russia in the 1960s, has anxiolytic, meaning anxiety relieving, and nootropic or cognition enhancing effects. Also stimulates dopamine receptors and antagonizes something called beta phenylethylamine, or PEA. Which is something that occurs within the body naturally and is considered anxiogenic, meaning anxiety producing. So it's actually widely prescribed. Phenibut is widely prescribed within Russia to relieve tension, anxiety, and fear, to improve sleep in psychosomatic or neurotic patients, as well as pre or post-operative medication. So one thing that I found in this paper that I didn't find, let's say, from my initial research on Phenibut, is that it actually also seems to have activity at the benzodiazepine receptor. I'm sure many of you guys have heard of benzos before. It has a tiny bit of activity there. It might increase affinity of other compounds or molecules at that receptor. But yeah, it was suggested that Phenibut may activate dopaminergic processes, and that this may be important for the sedative and tranquilizing effects of the drug. It's very interesting that Phenibut has activity at the dopamine receptor. Obviously, as many of you may know, dopamine is the primary neurotransmitter molecule associated with drive, goal orientation, and productivity, let's say. Also pleasure to a degree. So it makes sense that in the pharmacodynamic profile of Phenibut, dopamine would be involved to some degree. So we have the GABA B receptor, the GABA A receptor to a lesser degree, also potentially dopaminergic effects, and some light activity at the benzo receptor potentially. So as far as the, let me know if I'm losing you guys with all the science talk, but I think it's important background, and then we'll get into some of the more, let's say, anecdotal stuff. We'll talk about dosaging and all of that. But the paper says, as far as the anxiolytic effect goes, the anxiolytic effect of Phenibut appears to be dependent on the emotional reactivity of the animals. So they did a study here with cats. So it says in anxious, and you can carry this over to whatever your situation is. Obviously, let's say an animal study to a human study isn't really a one-to-one correlation in terms of effect, but you can glean some potential insight into what may occur with humans, right? So in anxious and passive cats, Phenibut abolished or suppressed fear and brought about an aggressive reaction to provocation. In aggressive cats, Phenibut had no effect on aggression, and in non-aggressive cats without obvious fear, Phenibut expanded the scope of positive emotional symptoms. So as you can see in that particular group of cats, non-aggressive cats without fear expanded the scope of positive emotions. In anxious and passive cats, abolishes or suppresses fear. So it does mention in the aggressive cats, the group of aggressive cats, that it had no effect. So the other papers generally were mostly about withdrawal symptoms that people can have from taking Phenibut. It's one of the main things that people need to look out for when they're using Phenibut is to be very judicious with how they utilize it, how frequently they utilize it, and make sure that they're not taking too much too often to make sure they don't develop a tolerance and then therefore the resulting in the withdrawal symptoms that can occur when you stop taking it. So, but the literature does mention that Phenibut toxicity can result in depressive symptoms, decreased levels of consciousness, muscle tone, and stupor, and you can become intoxicated, have some slight breathing. Well, not slight. You can have breathing issues, ultra consciousness, temperature dysregulation, hyper or hypotension, and tachycardia. So, and also psychomotor agitation, hallucination. It goes on, and this is in the withdrawal cases, right? So that's why it's very important that when you're taking Phenibut, you are very judicious with how you use it. If you can be careful with how you use it and judicious, you won't have much of an issue with avoiding the withdrawal. So let's see. And then we have one more Phenibut, an easily obtainable dietary supplement with propensities for physical dependence and addiction. So the abstract just says over the last few years, multiple case reports have highlighted Phenibut's potential to produce conditions of physical dependence, withdrawal, and addiction. It's a potent psychoactive substance, which is emerging as a drug of misuse through internet sales. It does say it's marketed as a dietary supplement, but it's more of a compound, a pharmacological compound, due to its ability to induce specific physiologic changes. So, again, it's just pointing out that there's a potential for withdrawal and withdrawal symptoms. So that's what the literature has to say about it. Like I said, there's not been a lot of studies done, human studies, at least in the West. I couldn't find anything in English or in any other languages for that matter. So do with that what you will. Now on to the actual experience of Phenibut. What is it actually like to take? How does it handle with anxiety and social anxiety? So like I said, there's no randomized controlled trials, but there are thousands of reviews of Phenibut online. And there's a general consensus that with Phenibut, it has great effects on anxiety and particularly good as a short-term solution for social anxiety. So it's very good, solid anxiolytic in my experience, meaning reducing anxiety. And at the right dose, it can significantly lower social anxiety in particular. So it's also fairly useful for, like, let's say, difficult days where you're doing heavily focused work where you don't particularly enjoy it. And it enables you to kind of lock in on whatever it is that you're doing. And it has a mood boosting effect so that you don't quite mind as much that particular task. Also, it makes music sound amazing. It boosts your overall mood. It makes you very social. All of these different things, and it contributes to, let's say, a positive disposition. So it can alter your mood in a very positive way. So in my experience, like I said, I took it between 2017, 2018, and I had a very good experience with it. I was very careful about how much I took and how often. And of course, I measured things out. So, I would listen to music. It made it very easy to go to my job. And I would go to the beach. It was always at that particular time I was dealing with a little bit of social anxiety, and it made it just a lot easier to get out into social situations and things like that. So that's my experience. So who should take Phenibut? So who can and should take Phenibut is an interesting and very important question. So generally speaking, and this is just my opinion on the matter. Obviously, it's not FDA approved. It's not regulated. It's considered a dietary supplement, but it acts more like a drug. So generally speaking, in my opinion, you shouldn't take it if you have multi-system complex neurological issues or imbalances. People with narcolepsy should not take it. And I'm not really comfortable advising people who experience seizures to take it simply because dysfunctions in the GABA system, the neurological system that Phenibut interacts with, you guys remember I said it's inhibitory, right? So if you experience seizures, I'm not comfortable advising you to take it because I don't want to it may throw off some kind of balance and further throw off the balances of those systems if they're already compromised. So um, yeah. So if you're already taking any kind of prescription drug, caution is urged, especially if you take any kind of psychotropic medicine or ones that have psychological effects. And the reason for that being is, of course, Phenibut will play into your GABA system. It's part of your overall central nervous system. All of these things work in a certain kind of balance. Some combinations of different pharmaceuticals or psychotropic drugs are a-okay. Others there may be an issue with, and like I said, Phenibut hasn't really been studied in that regard at all. Not even just like a basic study with humans. So, but all of that aside, just remember this drug or supplement or whatever you want to call it is appears to be relatively safe and has thousands of anecdotal positive experiences, just lacking in studies, right? So that's my experience, and yeah. So what is a common dose? Now, from my experience, I would start off as low as 100 milligrams, especially if it's your first time trying Phenibut. It can take 30 to 60 to 90 minutes to take effect. So I would take that low dose if you're going to try it, and then wait and see what type of effect occurs before taking any more. You can actually see commonly internet companies. This one's from Lift Mode. This one right here, this bottle, comes in a 300 milligram dose per pill. I don't know if you guys can see it because of the light. Let's see. Let me try reducing the light here so you can see the bottle. There you go. So yeah, this is the Phenibut lit from Lift Mode. It comes in a 300 milligram bottle, and I found my peak effect was actually around a single dose of about 1 gram. So a gram is 1,000 milligrams. So that's dosing. Again, start low, wait because it takes a while to take effect, and then go from there. And as far as how often you can take Phenibut, Phenibut does, like I said, the core theme of this stream here is the potential withdrawal symptoms, and what you can do to avoid becoming physically dependent on it. Because all of the papers that have been written about Phenibut are generally about this specific aspect of it. So Phenibut has a reputation for causing intense withdrawals if it's not consumed on that proper schedule. So typically speaking, to avoid to avoid tolerance, you should take it no more than 1 to 2 times a week and leave like 3+ days between those days. If you do this maybe for a month or so and then cycle off for a few weeks, meaning don't take it, that's generally a pretty safe way to go. And for that reason, it helps avoiding that tolerance. Your body doesn't become tolerant to the compound and, let's say, acclimated and used to it being present. What generally would happen there is the number of those receptors would diminish. They would downregulate. And then once the compound disappears, you have virtually very little of it in your system, or your body's not producing enough of whatever compound binds to that receptor, and it causes withdrawals. So lastly, safety concerns. Like I mentioned, for safety concerns, just make sure you're not in the included groups of people that I talked about that should potentially not take it. So people who are prone to seizures, if you're taking, psychotropic medications, definitely be careful with that. If you have an addictive personality or an addictive streak, watch out as well. If you don't have an addictive personality and you stick to a strict schedule with it, when you take it, you'll likely be fine. So it can also make you drowsy. And in fact, the more of it you take, let's say you'll get more drowsy as you dose it more frequently at higher amounts. So if you're getting sleepy, generally it's a sign that you should consider slowing down. So again, in terms of my personal experience with Phenibut, it was a very positive experience for me overall. I did notice if I was using it every, let's say, 2 days or so, you would start to get a little bit sleepy. So just be careful with that. Make sure you're spacing it out, like let's say every 3 days or so, and excuse me, no more than twice a week, right? So that's going to help protect you against the withdrawals that seem to be the concern in these medical papers. And just make sure you watch your six, right? Watch your back. Obviously, as entrepreneurs, we're looking for every advantage we can get. And a pro-social anxiolytic drug with dopaminergic properties sounds like a dream come true potentially. So again, just make sure you're not viewing this with an addictive eye. It's not a crutch. It's not something that you should use too regularly. And it's not something you should use to cover up an existing problem. But that being said, if all of those things are in a good place, all these things I mentioned, then Phenibut should work just fine for you. And it's a very good positive experience. So anyway, that's my video on Phenibut and how to use it, safety concerns, dosing, my experience, general collective experiences. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be more like it to come. Again, do me a favor. Make sure you like, share, subscribe to the channel. Very important. I am live on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, so you can find me on all those platforms. I'm on YouTube at Rise Above Health, all one word. Instagram at rise.above.health. And TikTok, Rise Above Health, all one word. Join the Facebook group. We have a group for entrepreneurs, and it's Rise Above Health, health optimization, and performance coaching for busy entrepreneurs. So again, I appreciate you guys for joining the stream this evening. Remember, health is wealth. Health creates wealth. And I hope you guys are having a great night. I'll see you on the next video. Take care. Talk to you soon. Peace.